today is a no war on Iran protest. Look at what time it is. Everybody in this country, everybody in the world. The president of the sole superpower of the world is on trial. This is a big deal. This is a fascist regime that's on trial. And they're actually using this trial. This trial is not only unfair and a sham, but it's actually a way that the Trump-Pence regime is advancing fascism by, again, attacking the rule of law. And what people do, like right now, at this moment, it can change the whole equation. It can change the whole situation if people take a note from what people have done all over the world. When you have a fascist regime in power, when you have an authoritarian in power, all over the world in the last year, people have been flooding the streets in unrelenting ways, all kinds of people, like from all walks of life, finding their way into these protests and saying, we find the situation intolerable and we're gonna lay something on the line for it. So we think this protest today, it's very important that people are saying no war in Iran. But frankly, we've got to dig deep into what we really know, what we really think and know in our bones. And that is that, we've been in an endless war for a long time. This country has been fighting endless wars all over the world. And even to stop this war, it's going to take people, there is no painless progress. It's going to take people putting something on the line and getting into the streets in a repeated, sustained way. And frankly, at this moment, you've got to be demanding that this regime has to go, because we have the situation with Trump and his attacks on Iran. He's been doing that from the time that he came into office. He said 3 times, if we have nukes, why can't we use them? This is a threat to all of humanity and the planet. This guy is throwing gasoline on a literally burning planet. And we have to understand the terrain that we're on. And just because this didn't all start with Trump and Pence does not at all mean that Trump and Pence and this regime being in power doesn't matter, or that somehow that's an obstacle that we can just ignore and it's gonna pass. We have to learn the lessons of history in this. And we have to, very, very soon, as soon as possible, people need to be flooding the streets of DC right now. Refuse Fascism is there right now. Refuse Fascism is going to have nationwide demonstrations, including here in Seattle on Wednesday, possibly joining with other demonstrations that might happen on Wednesday right before the Senate vote. We cannot rely on the Senate. They're not going to stop this. The only thing that can stop this is if we create a crisis on the ground demanding the singular unifying demand, Trump, Pence, out now, from all of our perspectives, so that then we can go forward and actually do the things that are possible to make a better world.
Trump and Pence are fascists! There's no doubt! Rise up! Rise up! Rise up! Out!
We were led to believe that America came to the brink of war with Iran just a couple of weeks ago. But I'm here to tell you, we've been lied to. This administration wasn't at the brink of war. They are already in war. An inhumane, asymmetrical, and deadly war. The economic sanctions, the so-called maximum pressure campaign, are euphemisms for siege. Surely, no one has a doubt that a city, a country under siege is under attack. Remember, this economic war is not designed to put pressure on the rulers of Iran. The people on top in Iran benefit from the sanctions. They control the border, they smuggle, they hoard, and have a lucrative black market in their grip. Mike Pompeo himself admitted that these sanctions are designed to make people suffer, so they rise up against their government and bring about regime change. Due to this recent siege, people of Iran have lost access to many everyday items, but more importantly, specialty medicine. And children have died because of it. However, America can still make it right. We can make it right. If the American government stops treating Iran like a pariah, lift all sanctions, normalize relationships, and let the Iranian people be present at the global stage, the Iranian leaders will be proven wrong. They will lose their ideological support, which is based on the very premise of America being a bully. And this administration has managed to vindicate them over and over. Which American wouldn't want US to be a symbol of humanitarian values and not symbol of destruction, interventionism, and neo-imperialism overseas? But there is big money in conflict, big, big money. A lot of people became richer overnight just because of a possibility of war with Iran. Yes, our senators get big campaign money from defense contractors, but don't feel defeated. They might want their money, but they need our vote. Look up who is in the pocket of the pro-military PACs and outvote them. Look up who says no to the warlord money and vote for them. It's not a blue or red issue. The people on top, they all do it. It's an American issue. It's a humanitarian issue. Conservative, moderate, progressive, left, right, center, doesn't matter. Make your wishes known. The military should be there to protect you, not be made into mercenaries for hire that protect the interests of other nations, while creating generations of America-hating humans to sustain the war economy and the military-industrial complex. Let's take the first step towards ending this vicious cycle. Thank you.
On this global day of protests to demand no war on Iran, there are 153 actions taking place in 20 different countries. Let's reflect. We're told that humans are selfish, that we are all so different from one another that we just can never get along. Yet people all over the world are acting in unity. The rhetoric of individualism is a lie. Of course, each human is unique, and we are all interdependent. We share the same basic human needs and aspirations, and the same basic rights. Among them, the right to live in peace. And we know that peace is more than simply the absence of war. It is the affirmative presence of justice. We know that the people of Iran are not our enemy. We know that it is wrong for the U.S. government to bully other nations, to interfere in their internal affairs, to use military and economic might to build a neo-colonial empire, to maintain control of natural resources and so-called strategic regions. And we know the horrific and genocidal impact of these imperialist and colonialist policies on our friends in the impacted countries, as well as on poor, working class, and nationally oppressed communities here at home. While trillions are spent on war, people just around the corner from here are sleeping on the street in tents. Shame. And as Salome just explained to us about the impact of sanctions in Iran, people are suffering there from the impact of supposedly, sanctions are not a more peaceful, gentle option to war. They kill people. And here every day, likewise, medical care is being impacted by the military budget. People literally are dying every day here at home because they cannot afford medication. They cannot afford proper medical treatment for treatable conditions, and they are dying. Meanwhile, the military budget grows and grows and grows. The lie is that we are all selfish and self-centered. The truth is that solidarity and unity can be a power greater than any empire. We just have to realize our own power and become organized. I want to talk to you about the next step for our movement after today. A call has come for March 19 through 21 to be days of global protest demanding the U.S. troops out of Iraq. March 19 and 20 represent the 17th anniversary of the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003. And I'd like to point out that we have young anti-war activists here with us today who were not even born when that war started. Those 2 days are a Thursday and a Friday, so the global days of action are extended to Saturday, March 21st, which might be more convenient for some people. Iraq wants the U.S. out. How many people saw the coverage of the 1 million people march in Iraq? Woo! Very impressive, right? Very impressive. Over 1 million Iraqis joined together to demand that U.S. troops leave. The Trump administration and the Pentagon have made it clear that the U.S. will not exit from Iraq, even though they also claim that ISIS has been completely defeated in Iraq. Trump also said that the U.S. will essentially seize all of Iraq's oil revenues if the government follows through in forcing out the U.S. troops. Iraq's oil revenues are held in an account in the Federal Reserve Bank in New York. This demonstrates the purely colonial character of the U.S. occupation of Iraq. We will also demand end sanctions on Iran and U.S. out of the Middle East at the global days of protest.
I want to first off start by acknowledging that we are on occupied, stolen land of the Coast Salish nations, that we should be saying these words and recognizing these tribal nations every single day. The Duwamish, the Suquamish, Tulalip, Puyallup, the Muckleshoot, and the Tlingit and Haida, such as myself. So I'll first off introduce myself in my language that I'm learning as my act of resistance by saying Phoenix Kleka Yesh Ayahat Takwanadi Nahat Siti Yayah Na Dakhiri. I am Phoenix and I am of the Takwanadi clan of the Tlingit Haida Nation of Southeast Alaska. I'm an Air Force veteran, formerly working in Air Combat Command and Control, and also a federal contractor for the Army working in suicide prevention, taking the hands of those who could not live with the atrocities of war and what they participated in. The assassination of Soleimani is just the latest unilateral action edging us towards another wave of war. It's just one of many hostile actions the U.S. has taken against Iran. Trump has filled his cabinet with warmongers, pulled out of nuclear deals, embarked on a maximum pressure campaign that sent thousands more U.S. troops to the Middle East, and imposed crippling economic sanctions on Iran. War with Iran would be yet another bloody disaster, and it's clear, based on extensive evidence, including the release of the Afghanistan papers just last month, that the U.S. has had no strategy or accountability in conflict zones and only perpetuates chaos, confusion, and violence. Iran and Iraq of 80 and 38 million human beings deserve peace after the devastating U.S. war and violence of a war we as global citizens of many nations have not consented to. The U.S. is historically disruptive and destabilizing to many people, just as Iraq and Iran, who deserve to achieve their own sovereign justice within their own respective governments. The Iraq parliament has voted for the removal of all U.S. troops from Iraq. If the U.S. does not honor the request by withdrawing military forces, we violate the very democratic sovereignty the U.S. has claimed to fight for since 2003 and further prove that the U.S. is there only to serve their colonial and economic interests, just as they have across the world in homelands of indigenous, black, and brown homes they violently occupy. The Trump administration's actions may be a blatant violation of both international law and the constitutional mandate that only Congress is granted the power to declare war, but most important, its inhumane perpetuation of violent white supremacy using human bodies as disposable arsenal that is costing our collective humanity. Veterans for Peace is sick of the lies, the massacres of innocent people, the waste of our national resources, and the deaths and injuries to our own service members. And I'm sick of watching an invasive colonial government use my land as a home base for violence in the wars here that are still raging on and abroad. So we cannot talk about the legacy of war and white supremacy without reconciling with the truth of genocide, slavery, concentration camps, internment camps, resource extraction, human exploitation, eco and economic terrorism, child soldiers, and the toxic roots and womb of the war machine. So I say no more. And we say no more. Thank you.
Maki baka! Wag matakot! Thank you. An empire in decline is a dangerous beast. Its success relies on its many heads. But when we unite, we can sever them before they grow any further. The United States government is a terror-spreading organization that has plagued West Asia for over half a century, and we will not idle on it. Anakbai in Seattle stands in solidarity with the people of Iran and West Asia. We condemn the US government's war provocations against Iran. We recognize that Soleimani's assassination raises the profile of the US government as a rogue imperialist state berserk in its gluttony. We see that US-led sanctions on Iran are strategic and intentional attacks that target Iranian citizens. Every day, the US government spends time, money, blood, destabilizing the global community. Is that what we want? No! They sponsor coups, assassinations, and funnel money from the masses instead of securing our needs like healthcare, fair wages, abolishing student debt, and sustainable infrastructure. The US government disguises its violence with protectionary and defensive language. It suffocates resources through economic sanctions, funding aggression through military aid, and extending the power of the state through defensive strikes. This is how imperialism hides its devastation and theft. It has resulted in the deaths of millions of Iranian and Iraqi people. The US imperial war machine thrives on appropriating and stealing the people's resources, no matter the human cost. Therefore, we must quickly organize against imperialism before it has a chance to spread further. Filipinos are no strangers to US imperialism. Just last year, the US gave over $193 million in military aid to the Philippine government to surveil and target Filipino progressive movements. This has done nothing but escalate violence against people who are simply fighting for their basic needs. As the National Democratic Movement in the Philippines, we stand in solidarity with the mass swell of people power that ousted the rulers of Lebanon and Iraq. We stand for the self-determination and sovereignty of all peoples. We side with the Iranian people in fighting for justice and genuine sovereignty from US hegemony. Solidarity with the people of Iraq and Iran. Solidarity with those who bear the burden of rising Islamophobia. Solidarity with all oppressed peoples. We call on all youth and students across the globe to resist the U.S. war machine that devastates communities worldwide. We have more in common with the Iranian people than we do with those who profit off of war. As internationalists, we demand that the U.S. government cut military aid to the Philippines and all oppressive regimes. We make this call because we understand that a blow to imperialism in one region slows down the beast as a whole. We condemn war profiteering companies like Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, and Raytheon, whose stock prices have gone up since the assassination of Soleimani. Refuse the spread of the United States military-industrial complex. The U.S. government is too comfortable in its forever wars. As we organize against imperialism, we must envision a future in which people are prioritized over profit. If the government will not serve the people, it is our duty to love and fight for one another. All oppressed peoples, especially the youth and those of the working class, must take up the fight to end imperialism. We have nothing to lose but our chains. So after today, we call on you to join the Resist US-led war movement. And now I'd like to end this with the chant. Long live international solidarity! Long live
International solidarity!
Long live!
International solidarity!
Thank you.
One, two, three, four. Slavery, genocide, and war. 5, 6, 7, 8. America was never free.
You might know that in Korea, we used to have several dictators, so we really against any kind of dictators, even in Philippines, US might be. And also thing is that we eager to have a real democracy in Korea. It's just still better than 20 years ago, but still we are working on it. And also thing is that we are trying to make a path to the reunification of Korea. Yeah. Thank you. Thing is that this is the only country in the whole world separated for more than 70 years. And thing is that because we separated, both government north or the south, both of them, they use it to treat the people, we're gonna have another war. And unfortunately, we are during the war still. And thing is that personally, I served 3 years in the army for the duty, and I got paid $10 per month, not per hour. And thing is that because we have the war, we are in the war, and we try to end the war today. And I don't believe there is such a good war. And I think that even 7 years after now, in 2020, we still talk about how miserable the war was. Actually, more than 1.3 million people died during the Korea War. Yeah, so I believe there can't be any such a good war, so we want to end the war today with the help of all the people. And we don't want to see any other war in Iran or any other part of the world. And then we work together and we stop war today. Okay. End the war, Korea. End the war when? Now. Peace treaty when? Now. End the war, Korea when? Now. Peace treaty when? Now. Thank you.
That was good.
We can do everything in our power to undermine the U.S. war effort that wants to murder countless innocent people for the crime of wanting a better life, free of U.S. intervention. It warms my heart to be among so many people who have chosen to accept this responsibility. So moving forward, it is our job to meet the sound of war drums with songs of peace, to say unambiguously that we stand with our family, our working class family overseas and at home. It is our job to take practical, concrete actions to undermine the efforts of the war machine. This will require actions from you and me that take place outside of this protest. I know many of you are already engaged in the anti-war work, and I am so thankful that you are here. Seattle actually has a history of anti-war work. In 2008, ports across the entire West Coast, and I'm talking from Mexico all the way up to Canada, decided we will not ship war cargo to the Middle East. They shut down the ports, every single one of them, and that includes Seattle. So thank your longshoremen there. And these are not things that are frozen in time. This isn't stuck solely in the past. We can do these things now ourselves. We have the power to shut things down if they're going to hurt people. So let's get this kind of work rolling again. There are more global protests in March. We can disrupt their war efforts. We can cripple the beast's attempts to go to war with Iran and Iraq. Let's rebuild the anti-war movement in the United States and shut this monster down.
I think it's really good for people to remember back to that narrative, you know, the whole weapons of mass destruction, things that we found to not have, you know, any basis in truth. And then we have to put that, see the danger of that in a context where the truth itself in every sphere is being attacked. I mean, that's one of the hallmarks of fascism, right? The truth doesn't matter. You know, nobody can really determine the truth. Everyone just has their own narratives. Everything's fake news, etc., etc. Like, this is, you know, how are you going to fight if that becomes the way decisions are being made? If that's the outlook of the people in power, if you have a fascist regime in power, you know, how are you going to stop? How are you going to stop these wars? You know, they have no answers. You know, I'm going a little beyond just the unity of refuse fascism here, but the system itself, they don't have any answers. Capitalism doesn't have any answers for the climate crisis. And there is a thing of, like, you know, how do you actually impose a future of horrors on people when you don't, you know, what is your answer when you have no answers to actually solving the problem? And fascism is one possible answer to that, and people need to wake up, because, you know, if you think it can't happen here, I mean, why? You know, this is some kind of American exceptionalism, some kind of American chauvinism, that you think that a country founded on genocide and war and slavery couldn't actually, you know, couldn't give rise to fascism. But it's also the case that we're not so different here that we can't rise up like other people all over the world, who also have all kinds of obstacles to them being able to interrupt their daily lives and put something on the line. But they did it, and we can do no less.
I am a very grateful Iranian American. I have the privilege to live in Seattle. I'm very grateful for that. I was born and raised in Iran, and I was in Iran during the Iraq and Iran war, and I have a first-hand experience how war affects people, and I don't want a war for anyone. I don't. Yes. In the mid-'80s, when Saddam Hussein initiated the war against Iran, right after revolution, I saw firsthand how it affected our families, our innocent children. At the time, I was going to medical school in Tabriz, and we saw Iraqi bombs landing, and we have to evacuate the city. And I wasn't sure we were going to make it or not. And then later on, as a nurse, I took care of the soldiers who were wounded and were flown to Mashhad. I took care of 16 years old boys who who were promised to go to heaven, missing limbs. And we were under sanction. We didn't have enough pain medicine or alcohol to take care of them. And I remember this 16 years old not having arms or legs. He says, he was holding my hands. He says, I wanted to go to heaven. Let me go. Help me. Those days, Donald Rumsfeld was the Secretary of Defense and was selling weapons to Saddam to bomb us. That's not right. We don't want this to happen again. We don't want the old history to happen again. Our leaders need to learn from the past mistakes. We can't repeat the past mistakes. We need to lose the mistakes and learn the lessons from it. Iranian people love America. We love you guys. You have given us opportunity of education, and then we look up to American leaders. We want the world leaders' support. We want our world leaders' support to bring us together. We want unity. And I love you guys. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your support.
Love you. Love you.
No war with Iran. No threats. No bombs. No war against Iran. No threats. No bombs. No war against Iran.
So the only way he figures that he's going to get reelected, and as sure as you're sitting there, is to start a war with Iran. Start a war in order to get elected, and I believe that's going to happen, would be an outrage. I believe that he will attack Iran sometime prior to the election because he thinks that's the only way he can get elected. Isn't it pathetic?